How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf. Right. So today we're studying Daf Nun, technically, of Masechta BavaBasra. But the truth is, we're going to start on Daf Mem Tes Amud Aleph. We got a lot of Daf Mem Tes to do, and we're going to get from Mem Tes Amud Aleph to Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. So in a sense, it's almost like two Daf. But again, this is BavaBasra, so like these dafs are so short. That doesn't mean that they're quick or easy, but they're short, so they're just like, before you know it, you're on another daf. Anyways, the reason why I divided it up this way, even though it's kind of weird because yesterday was so small and today's like two daf, but because we're starting a new sugya and it basically just continues until Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. So that's what we're doing. It's a sugya of the Mishnah had said that a husband cannot make a chazaka on his wife's property. That if a husband is like eating the fruits of his wife's field, so he cannot. He's eaten there for 3 years. He can't then claim that he bought it from her and that he lost the shtar and that he has a chazaka. That doesn't work. It's the morning. I have coffee. So here we go. Okay, so we're going to start on Daf Nun Tes Amud Aleph. Excuse me. Sorry, Bob. Okay. So we're going to start on Daf Nun Tes Amud Aleph at the two dots. Oh, okay. So as I said, a husband does not have a chazaka on his wife's property. So if he's there for 3 years, it doesn't matter. You can't claim that he owns the property. Pshita, this should be obvious. Given the islay lefeira peru de ka'achel. Well, right. So if we're talking about, I guess we are talking about nichse milog. Okay, nichse milog. I guess that his wife brings into the marriage, and she owns the property. It's her property. Now, so long as they're married, he can eat the fruits. But it's her property, and everybody knows that. That's the way it works. So if he's eating from the field, obviously he can't make a chazaka that way. He's eating the fruits. Everybody knows, right? He's entitled to the fruits. He's eating the fruits. That in no way shows that he owns the field. Is why that's the whole way that nichse milog works. It belongs to her. He eats the fruits. He's not what's the word am I thinking of? He's not demonstrating ownership of the land by eating the fruits. He's demonstrating that he's married to his wife. Okay, so therefore to say that like he's been there for 3 years and therefore he has a chazaka, right? In order to make a chazaka, you have to show that like, this is my land, I've been working the field, I've been doing all these things. If it's yours, why didn't you say anything? She didn't say anything because like he's literally just doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's eating the fruits. Okay. So pshita, it's obvious that he can't make a chazaka. Came the islay lefeira, since he has rights to the fruit. Peru dekachli, he's eating his fruits. He's not demonstrating ownership. So the tzricha dechasav law dinu dvarim ainli benichsaich. Well, we're talking about a scenario where the husband wrote to the wife and he says, "I have nothing to do with your nichse milog. I'm not going to eat the fruits. Nothing." And then all of a sudden he's eating the fruits for 3 years, and now he claims that she sold him the field, and that's why he was eating from it, because it's his. And after all, he wrote a document, he wrote to her that he wasn't going to have anything to do with her nichse milog, so therefore he's not eating it as nichse milog, as he's not eating it because he's entitled to the fruits because it's nichse milog. He said he's not going to have anything to do with the nichse milog. So what's he doing on the field? It's his. He claims that he bought it from her. But who cares if he writes dinu dvar mainly b'nichsaich? Who cares if he writes, I have nothing to do with your fields, with your property? We learn in the Brayso, somebody says to his friend, dinu dvar mainly al sadazo v'ni esek ba v'yadam sulakos mimenas. We've seen before, if one partner says to another partner that again dinu dvar mainly al sadazo, I have nothing to do with this field anymore. I have no business in it, I have no interest in it. My hands are removed from it. Lo amar klum. It's absolutely irrelevant. So therefore, when the husband says that I have nothing to do with your nichse milog, that should make no difference. So Amilo Dever Biana, they say by the Besmensh of Biana, Masnisim Bekosev Lo Veoda Arusa. Well, it's talking about when he writes to her, Dinudvar Mainly Benichsayich, he writes this to her before Beoda Arusa, before they're actually married. They're only engaged at this point. And he only gets the Nichse Melog. What does Rashbam say? That he would only have rights to the fruits at the time of Nisun. But before then, before he had access to the Paris, he already wrote in advance, I want nothing to do with the Nichse Melog. So meaning the scenario with the two partners, where one says to the other, I have nothing to do with the field, that's where he's already an owner. In that case, when he says, I have nothing to do with the field, it's irrelevant. He has to dafka say, I'm giving it to you as a gift. If he gives it as a gift, that's it. But just to say that I have nothing to do with this field anymore is not the same as giving a gift, and it's irrelevant. So, but here we're talking about where the husband wrote this to his wife before Nisuin, during Erison, at which point he didn't yet have access to the fruits of the Nichse Melog. And therefore, in advance, he's able to stipulate, I don't want any rights to the Nichse Melog that will be coming in the future. I'm canceling them in advance. So that he can do. And then he doesn't have any rights to the Nichse Melog. And we're saying that even so, if he now eats if he's eating from the Nichse Melog for 3 years, and then he claims you sold it to me, right? And he wasn't there just by right, because he had written in advance that he's waiving the right. So he then claims that he was there because she sold it to him, and that's why he was now there. It's still not a chazaka. Uchad Rav Kana, and this ability to waive a future right is like Rav Kana. Rav Kana says, Rav Kana, Nachla abalo la'adam imakum acher adam masne aleo shlo yirashena. That an inheritance that comes to a person from left field, from a different place, I wouldn't say necessarily from left field, but an inheritance that comes to a person from a different place, adam masne aleo shlo yirashena, a person can stipulate that they're not interested. Uchderava, and what is this inheritance that comes from a different place? It's like Rava. The Amar Rava says, Rava, Kola Omer ifshi bitakonas chachamim kigon zos shomen lo. A person who says, I have no interest in this takonas chachamim such as this, we listen to them. My kigon zos. What is this? Kedir Ravuna Amarav. So Ravuna Amarav. The Amar Ravuna Amarav says Ravuna Amarav. Yechola isha shetom levaila eni nizonis ve'eni osa. A woman can say to her husband, look, don't pay for my food and don't take my seyadain, coffee. Because as we know, I think already probably from Masechet Ksubis, where is it? Is this quoted from Masechet Ksubis? Yeah. That, of course, a husband, one of the things that one of his obligations to his wife is to provide her with food. And now, in exchange, if she works, well then the money that she makes, that she earns, goes to him. And that's because of Ava. That's because of we want to kind of we don't want anybody to have any chips on their shoulders, right? We don't want to have a situation. If the husband is paying for her food, and then she's also working and making her own money, and he's getting a little flustered, like, hey, why do I have to, make sure that why am I paying for all the food while she's out making a good living? So therefore, the exchange is that the husband must provide his wife with food, and in exchange, if she works, meaning he has to provide her with food regardless of if she works or not. If she doesn't work, he provides her with food. If she does work, he provides her with food. But in that case, he's entitled to the earnings. Now, if she says, "Look, I don't need you to pay for my food. I'd much rather waive that. This whole deal where you pay for my food and I hand over my earnings. This doesn't work for me. I'm not interested. I want to keep my earnings. And sure, I'll pay for my own food. I don't care. I don't need this deal. And therefore she waives her right to any future mizonis, right? She says, look, from now on, I don't want, I know that tomorrow you're going to, provide me with food. I don't want it. So she's entitled to waive that future right. And here also, the husband is able to waive that future right that he will have to the Peiros Nichsei Milug. He is entitled to waive that, and then he doesn't have a right to it. Nonetheless, even though he waives that right, if he then is eating from the fruits of the field for 3 years, and then he claims that I bought it from her, and even though I didn't have, because if I didn't buy it from her, I had waived my right. It's not like I'm just here eating the fruits that I have the right to. I waived that right. What I was doing here is because I had bought the field from her, she had sold it to me. Still, it is not a valid chazakah. That's what the Mishnah is saying. That a husband cannot make a chazakah in his wife's nichsei milug, even if he waives his right to them in advance. The reason why he cannot make a chazakah in his wife's nichsei milug, even though he had waived his right in advance, is because of the concept of nachas ruach asisi levaili, which is we are going to be sort of involved with now in the next chunk of today's daf. The concept of nachas ruach asisi levaili, which is basically the wife says, like, I was sort of like pressured into it. In a sense, manipulated. Whatever. Nachas ruach asisi levaili means that, look, I'll tell you why I didn't say anything. Meaning, yes, he waived his right to the nichsei milug, and therefore, why was he? And I saw that he was eating from the field. So then, why didn't I say anything? I didn't want to create friction. Kilu, okay, I know he waived his right to the Peiros Nichsei Milug. He's eating them nonetheless. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I don't really care. He can eat from the fruits of my field, like, it doesn't bother me. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Nachas ruach asisi levaili, it was more important to me that that we have kind of a smooth relationship than I give him a hard time about eating fruits. So, therefore, she says, yeah, I know that he was eating from the fruits, even though he had stipulated that he was waiving his right. But nonetheless, she says, look, nachas ruach asisi levaili, if he wants to eat the fruits, I don't really care, that's why I didn't say anything. Okay, fine. Now, says the Gemara is now medayik, it infers, haraya yesh, but a proof would be valued, right? The Mishnah says, right, just like we were medayik the other day with the aris and with the umin, that there's no chazakah, but there is a raya, right? So in this case, if the husband were to have a document or witnesses that his wife sold him her nichsei milug, or gave it as a gift, I reckon, in that case, it would be valid. It would be valid that if he has a document saying that she sold him her nichsei milug, then that's valid. Haraya yesh. But why doesn't she make the same argument? Nachas ruach asisi levaili. Look, my husband came, he wanted my nichsei milug. So, kind of put me in an uncomfortable situation. So I said yes, but I really, it was really lo naim. It was really not, I said yes because I didn't want to make a whole fight, but I didn't really want to sell him my nichsei milug. So that's the shayla. Why don't we say, right? Why is that not a valid sort of excuse, I guess, or explanation here? Right? It's a valid explanation by chazakah. She says, look, I didn't say anything is nachas ruach asisi levaili, and yet it is not a valid explanation if there is a shtar, or if there are edim. Okay. So again, haraya yesh. So if he has a document or witnesses, well then it is a valid sale, and he would have access. It would be his field. But why can't she explain that the only reason why she sold it to him was because of nachas ruach asisi levaili, but she didn't really want to sell to him? After all, milotnan. After all, do we not learn in a Mishnah After all, do we not learn in the Mishnah? Lokach min ha'ish, because of a lokach min ha'isha, mekcho bottle. Amar nachasruach hasisi levaili. Achanami tema nachasruach hasisi levaili. Givaldig. What's this talking about? It's talking about, okay, so a woman who's married, she has a ksuba. Okay, now the ksuba has sort of a monetary value, right? But there's the mana, masayim, the tosefes. Now also in the ksuba there's like mizonus and things like that, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about sort of the contractual payment of the ksuba, that if they get divorced or if he dies, so then she has, she gets this money. So his property is meshubad to that amount. Okay, right? It's like a loan, and his property is meshubad, and if he sells the property, he can be tarif min alakuchis. She can be tarif min alakuchis. She can take it away from right. If she needs to collect her ksuba, she goes to the whoever bought it, and she could take it because that money was, she has the right to that money first. Now, what about a scenario where you have a husband and he wants to sell his property to somebody else? Now that property is meshubah to her, which means that if the husband dies and she needs to collect her ksuba, so then she'll go to that third party if there's no other property and say, hey, I need to collect my ksuba. So the husband sells that property to somebody else, and now that person goes to the wife, and says, hey, can we make a deal? Right? Maybe I can give you epis, and that way you won't, if your husband dies before you, so then you won't come after me to be to collect the field. And she says, yes, whatever. We say, so what does it say? It says, Tanan lokach min ha'ish. So if you have this, buyer who buys property from the husband, because of a lakach min ha'ish, and then he goes to the wife and he cuts a deal with her so that she won't come after him. Mekcho batel. That doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? She sold him. She made a kinyan. She waived her rights to be tarif milkuchis. So why does that not work? The answer is because she says, I didn't want to waive essentially my right to collect my ksuba, but I felt pressured. My husband wanted to sell the field. The only thing standing between his sale, between him being, the only thing blocking, the only impediment to the sale is me. So I felt that, I was in an uncomfortable situation. So I agreed. I said, sure, and whatever you want. But I didn't want to actually sell that. So obviously I want to be able to collect my ksuba if we get divorced or if he dies. So therefore she could say, and that sale between her and this third party is irrelevant. Because of nachas ruach hasisi levali. So therefore says the Gemara, let's say the same thing over here. That if she sells her nichse melog to her husband, let her say, wait, but I didn't really want to. That's why I did it. So now our Mishnah said that the husband cannot make a chazaka in his wife's nichse melog, but if there's a valid document that shows that she sold it to him, then that's relevant. But can't she say nachasuach hasisi levaili? So maybe it should be irrelevant. So answered the Gemara, ha'itmar Allah. Well, the thing is that it's taught about that scenario when we say nachasuach hasisi levali by the sale, and we say the sale between her and the third party is null and void. That's in a specific case. It does not apply though to nichse melog. Nichse melog, we're going to get to this in a second, but nichse melog is her property. Belongs to her. Nobody could force her to sell her own property, and if she sells that property, well then, she sold her own property, and she can't say nachasruach asisi lebaili in that case, right? So ha'it marla, it's taught about this scenario where she can say nachasuach asisi levaili, and that she was pressured into selling her rights to collect her ksuba from the property to the third party. Ha'it Marla was taught, Amar Bar Rav Huna, says Rav Bar Rav Huna, Le'nitzucha ela ba'osan gimel sados. That is, we needed to teach this of nachasuach asisi lebaili by these three fields. That there are basically three scenarios where the husband specified to the wife that, if we get divorced, he sort of singles out, he designates a field that she will be able to collect her ksuba from. She'll be able to collect ksuba from that field. And this is the field that he wants to sell. And we're saying that in that case, if he sells it to this third party, and this third party now comes to her and has her sell the right to be torif milekuches, we say that it doesn't work, because she could say nachasuach asisi lebaili. That applies to when a field is designated for collection of the ksuba. So gimel sados, three fields. Achas, example number one, shekasav la b'ksuba. If he specifically wrote explicitly in the ksuba document itself that this particular field that he's now selling, he had written in the document that was going to be a field that she would be able to collect the ksuba from. So alternatively, if with witnesses he designated that a particular field would be for payment of her ksuba, and now he wants to sell it. Or nichsetzon barzel, right? Nichsetzon barzel is a property that she brings in to the marriage, and he could do whatever he wants with it. He just needs to, in the event of divorce or death, he needs to guarantee the value of the field at the time of the marriage. And she kind of always assumes that, like, okay, at least there's like this nichsetzon barzel, now he wants to sell it. So in these cases, if she agrees to sell her right to be torif milekuches, she can say nachasuach asisi lebaili. And we say lemute mai to exclude. So we're saying these three cases she could say nachasuach asisi levaili to the exclusion of what? In what case would she be unable to say, to make the explanation of nachasuach asisi levaili? Ilema limute shar nechasim. If you're going to say, well, any of the husband's other properties that he did not specifically designate for payment of the ksuba, kol shekain tabule eva. Certainly, he will have eva, and therefore there should be it should be a valid explanation of nachasuach asisi lebaili. The amrula that he says to her, enayich nosat begerishin, that look, you're looking to get divorced with misa, or that I'm going to die. Elamute nichse melog, rather nichse melog. What does this mean? What this means is, it should be understood as this: even in one of these three fields, where if she would disagree, if she would say no, I don't want to sell my right to be tarif milekuches, it would be totally understandable. Kilu, the husband said, let's say, we'll take one of these examples, he writes into the ksuba, this particular field, you will be able to collect your ksuba from. And now he wants to sell that field. And he sells it to a third party, and then the third party comes to her and says, hey, can you sell me the right that you'll waive the right to collect from my field? If she says no, that's completely understandable. That's completely understandable. And yet, if she says yes, she can still say, I only said yes because of nachasuach asisi levaili. Even though you can argue that, well, you shouldn't have said yes because he would have understood. I mean, after all, he did write this particular field into the ksuba that this is what you're relying on to get your ksuba payment in the event of death or divorce. Like, it would be completely understandable if you said no, he would have been like, okay, I understand. And yet, she can say that when she agreed, it was only because she felt pressured, because of nachasuach asisi levaili. Certainly then, in just a regular field that wasn't specifically designated to the ksuba, she would be able to say that she only said yes because of nachasua chasisi levali, because there, if she would have said no, the husband, wouldn't have been as understanding, right? With a field that was specifically designated, okay, you can understand why she would say no. But in just a regular field that wasn't specifically designated, if he wants to sell it, and now she's the one who's saying, no, I don't feel comfortable, well, then he's going to get all upset. And he's going to say, why? Are you looking to get divorced? Do you think I'm going to die? What's your problem? So I understand why there she would certainly be able to say, because I didn't want to give a hard time. But even in a scenario where the field was specifically designated to the ksuba, and it would be completely understandable if she would refuse. And yet, even though she agreed, she could still later on say yes, but it was only because I felt pressured. So in all of those cases, she would be able to say nachasua chasisi levaili, whether the field was designated for the ksuba, whether the field was not designated for the ksuba, she would be able to say nachasua chasisi levaili. So what's the case where she can't say nachasua chasisi levaili? It must be nichse milog. It must be that if it's her field, she owns the field, he only has the rights to the fruits. And then he sells the fruits to somebody else, and she maybe tries to pressure her to sell the gufa karka, the property itself, to that third party. Or if she, as in our case, if she sells the field directly to him, in that case, she would not be able to say nachasuach asisi libaili. In that case, she would not be able to say nachasuach asisi levaili. Okay, so therefore our Mishnah says that a husband cannot make a chazaka on his wife's nichse milog, but if she sells it to him, then it's a valid sale, and she cannot say nachasuach asisi levaili. But frekti Gemara, ha'omer amemer. What about amemer? Says amemer, ish ve'isha shemachu b'nichse milog. Oh, so if you have a husband and a wife who sell nichse milog, excuse me, sorry, Bob. Lo asuf lo klum. It's irrelevant. It does not work. So what does that mean? I mean, we want to assume that what that means is that, well, if the husband sells the peiros of the nichse milog, and the wife then sells the gufa karka to this third party, lo asuf lo klum, it doesn't work because she could say by nichse milog, nachasuach asisi levaili, or if she sells the nichse milog to her husband, lo asaf lo klum, it doesn't work because mistama, the reason is because she could say nachasuach asisi levaili. So we see, so Meimar is saying that by nichse milog she can say nachasuach asisi levaili, and it's an invalid sale. Again, Amar Meimar, doesn't Meimar say ish ve'isha shemachu b'nichse milog, a husband and wife who sell nichse milog, lo asuf lo klum? It does not work. Mistama, because of nachasuach asisi levaili by nichse milog. So, and for the Gemara, no. That is not what it's talking about. Rather, what it's not talking about where like they both, she sells it to him, or he sells the peiros and she sells the gufa karka. No, that's not what it's talking about. Rather, when we say lo asaf lo klum, it's talking about, I'll say it outside first, it's talking about, it's talking about where the husband sells the peiros of the nichse milog to a third party, and then the husband dies. So in that case, the husband dies. The nichse milog belongs to the wife. The husband's dead. He's no longer eating the peiros. Whoever he sold the peiros to can no longer eat the peiros. Lo asaf lo klum. The husband sells the peiros of the nichse milog to a third party. He then dies. That third party's relationship with the land is completely over. The nichse milog is now entirely the wife's because the husband's no longer around. Done. Lo asaf lo klum. There's no longer any relationship between that third party and this property. Alternatively, if a wife sells the guf akarka, right, she has the nichse milog, she owns the property, the husband can eat the fruits. She then sells the guf akarka, the property itself, to a third party, and then she dies. Well, as we know from the Takanas Usha that we're about to see once again, the husband is considered the first buyer. So Kilu, it's considered like, well, the husband had bought it first, because he's the husband, and he had the right to it first. She then sold it to a third party, but he's considered the second buyer. She's now dead. So who gets it? Well, the husband is considered the first buyer, so the husband gets it. So, right, so her sale, again, this third party, if she sells the gufa karka to this third party but then dies, that third party no longer has a relationship with it. If the husband dies, okay, well then the husband has no longer any relation to it, and she had sold it to this third party, so the third party would get it at that point. But if she dies first, the husband would get it, not the third party. Okay? So when we say that by nichse melug lo v'lo klum, it's talking about if the husband sold his rights to a third party, but then he died, so the third party's out. Or if the wife sold her field to a third party, but then she died, it goes to the husband, the third party is out. That is what it's talking about, right? So ki itmar da amemer, when a memer says lo asav lo klum by nichse melug, heicha dizavin iu vamis. For example, if he sold his right to the fruits and then he died. So if she died and then he inherited the nichse melug and he had already sold the nichse melug to a third party, so it would go to the third party. But if he dies, well then she would get back her nichse melug entirely. Also, umafka, she comes and takes it away from the third party. It's hers. Inami, alternatively, zabna ihi, if she sold it to a third party. So in the event that the husband would die, so then he's out of the picture, and she had sold the field to the third party, so the third party would now get it. But if she dies first, vamesa, and she dies, also ihu, so the husband comes and now he inherits her, and it becomes, he inherits her, and the way we consider it as though he's the first buyer. Umapik b'takanta d'Rabbanan, and he takes it away from the third party, from the takana d'Rabbanan, Rabbi Yossi Bab Chanina, Rabbi Yossi Bab Chanina, b'usha eskinu, that they established in Usha, ha'isha shemachu b'nichse melug, that if a wife sells her nichse melug, vamesa, and then she dies, haba'al motzi miyad alakuches, the third party is out, and the husband can take it away from the third party, from the buyer. So that's what it means, lo asav lo klum. If the husband sells his the fruits and then he dies, or she sells the property and then she dies, aval heicha tizabinu tarvayu. But if but if the husband sold the fruits and she sells the gufa karka, inami zabna I ledide, or she sold the nichse melug to her husband, zabina zabine. It's a valid document. It's a valid sale. She cannot say. Okay. Alternatively, you know what? A memar is saying, like we initially thought, that the sale is null and void. Even if he sells the payers to somebody and she sells the gufa karka, it's null and void. Or she sells him the nichse melug, it's null and void. Because she could say, but what about the fact that our Mishnah disagrees? Our Mishnah says that there's no chazaka, but if there's a shtar or edim, it is a valid sale, because we don't say nachasur chasisi levali. Yet over here, Amemar is saying that we do say nachasur chasisi levali. He holds like Rabbi Lazar. That would be Rabbi Lazar's opinion. The Tanya is Bluna Baisa, Moches Avdo. Ufasakimo sheishamshenu shloshim yom. So if Shimon has an Eved, and Shimon sells his Eved to Ruvain. However, Shimon says, hey Ruvain, Mazel Tov, you now own the Eved. But I'm going to keep him for 30 days. It's yours as of now. But I'm gonna hold on to the Eved for 30 days. He's gonna work for me for 30 days, and then I'll give it to you. And in 30 days, not only will you own the Eved will be working for you. But just, for the first 30 days, you own the Eved, but he'll be working for me still for another 30 days. Now, by an Eved, there's a halacha. So first of all, but in general, the halacha is, if a person kills somebody else, so he's chayiv misa. I think b'sayif, I think that we plop off his head with a sword, the killer. So if somebody kills somebody else, there is a so you chayiv misa. The killer is chayiv misa. Now, that applies if you kill an Eved as well. An Eved is chayiv in mitzvahs, right? Just like a woman is chayiv in mitzvahs. So an Eved is he's chayiv in mitzvahs, and therefore if you kill him, you'll be chayiv misa, just like if you kill any other yid. Now, there is, however, a halacha that if an adon hits his Eved, so if the Eved dies, if he kills his Eved, so he's Chayiv Misa. But if the Eved stays alive and survives for 2 days and then dies, the Adon is Potter. Specifically the Adon. It's not talking about anybody, right? If somebody hits an Eved and he stays alive for 2 days and then he dies, you'd be Chayiv Misa. You killed the Eved if he died because of the blow. However, by the Adon, if the Adon deals a blow to his Eved, and the Eved lingers for 2 days and then dies, the Adon is Potter. So now, this taka happened. Shimon sold his Eved to Reuven, so Reuven owns the Eved now. But the Eved is still working for Shimon for 30 days. Shimon deals a blow to the Eved then lingers for 2 days and dies. So the shaila is, if it's considered, if this halacha would apply to Shimon, well then Shimon would be Potter. If it doesn't apply to Shimon, Shimon would be Chayiv Misa. So that's the shaila over here. So Amocher es Abdo, so if Shimon sells his Eved to Reuven, so Reuven now owns the Eved. Ufasak imo, but the deal is sheishamshenu shloshim yom, that the Eved is still going to work for Shimon for 30 days. And then Shimon deals a blow to the Eved lingers for 2 days and then dies. Rav Meir says, Harishin yeshno bidin yom o yomayim. So Rav Meir says that the original owner, Shimon, would be governed by the halacha of yom o yomayim, and he'd be Potter. Mipnei tachtov. I don't have the pasuk here, but it says umeis tachas yado, I believe. So tachas, so it's tachtov, right? The Eved is in Shimon's property right now. So therefore, the din of Yom Yomayim applies to Shimon. And even though, right, the pasuk says Achim Yom Yomayim Yamod Lo Yukum Ki Kaspohu, that the halach of Yom Yomayim has to deal with Kaspo. So even though technically the Eved belongs to Reuven, he's Kaspo, but nonetheless, Masheni Enu B'din Yom Yomayim, Reuven, right, Yom Yomayim would not apply to Reuven, because he's not currently working for Reuven, he's working for Shimon. Kasover kinyan peris ke kinyan aguf dami. Reb Meir holds kinyan peris ke kinyan aguf dami, that since Shimon has the rights to the peris, has the rights to the work of the Eved right now, well then he's considered like he owns the Eved right now, and therefore the din of Yom Yomayim would apply to Shimon, not to Reuven. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says punkt fakert. Hasheni yeshno b'din Yom o Yomayim. Reuven, the buyer, has the halacha of Yom o Yomayim, mipnei shehu kaspo, because at this point the Eved is kaspo. He purchased the Eved, so ki kaspohu. Therefore, Yom o Yomayim applies to Reuven. Arishin eno b'din Yom o Yomayim, but Shimon is not governed by Yom o Yomayim. She'eno kaspo, because Shimon no longer owns the Eved. Kasover kinyan peris lav kinyan aguf dami. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the fact that Shimon has the rights to the peiris, to the work of the Eved, for 30 days, is irrelevant. Reuven is the owner of the Eved. Yom Yomayim applies to Reuven, not to Shimon, because kinyan peiris lav kinyan aguf dami, having rights to the peiris does not give you rights to does not make you the owner of it. Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Rabbi Yossi, neither one, Yom Yomayim applies to both Reuven and Shimon. Neither one would be Chayiv Misa if the Eved lingers for 2 days and then dies. Shneim Yeshnem b'din Yom Yomayim. Both Reuven and Shimon are shaykh to the halach of Yom Yomayim. Zeh mipnei shu tachtov. Shimon is shaykh because the Eved is working for him. Zeh mipnei shu kaspo, and Reuven is shaykh because he owns the Eved. Umisapkale, because Rabbi Yossi is uncertain. Ikinyan peis ke kinyan aguf dami, ilav ke kinyan aguf dami. Because Rabbi Yossi is uncertain. Is kinyan peis ke kinyan aguf dami, in which case Shimon owns the Eved, or not, in which case Reuven owns the Eved. He's not certain. And therefore, if the Eved lingers for 2 days and then dies, and the shaila is whoever dealt that blow, chayiv misa or not, we're not sure. V'safek nefashos lahakal, and we're lenient when it comes to capital punishment, and therefore neither one is going to be chayiv Misa. Now, Rabbi Lazar Omer, finally, says Rabbi Lazar, Shneim Einon B'din Yom O Yomayim. Neither one is governed by the din of Yom O Yomayim. And either one, if they deal a blow to the Eved and the Eved lingers for 2 days and then dies, they would be chayiv. Whoever did it would be chayiv misa. Zelefi sheno tachtov, because Reuven would be chayiv misa because the Eved isn't currently working for him; it's not currently in his possession. Zelefi sheno kaspo, and Shimon would be chayiv because he doesn't own the Eved. V'amarova, and says Rava, my time of Rabbi Lazar, Akam Rabbi Lazar says this. Amarkal, the pasuk says, Lo yukom ki kaspo, who kaspo hamyuchad lo. It has to be his kesef, right? His property that, right, his kesef that is exclusively his. In this case, it's not exclusively anybody's, right? It's not exclusively Reuven's because Shimon, he's working for Shimon. It's not exclusively Shimon's because he doesn't own it, and therefore neither one would be governed by the halacha of Yom HaYomayim. And here oichet by the nichse milog. The sale is invalid because neither one fully owns the property. The husband has the rights to the fruits, but not the gufa karka, and the wife has the rights to the gufa karka. She owns the gufa karka, therefore nobody entirely owns it, and therefore a sale would be irrelevant. And therefore, when a meimar says that ish v'isha shemachru b'nichse melog lo asov v'lo klum, is because he holds like Rabbi Lazar that a sale of nichse melog doesn't work because nobody fully owns the nichse melog. The husband has the rights to the fruits; she has the rights to the gufa karka. Okay, Givaldig. Okay, so there's 2 dots here, but the truth is, the 2 dots don't seem to really need to be here. You just read it as a kasha. Is this really true? What our Mishnah says, that a husband cannot make a chazaka in his wife's property ever. V'amar of Rav, but Rav says Eishes ish tzricha limchos. But Rav says that a wife needs to be moche, and if she's not moche, then the husband would be able to make a chazaka. So we see that according to Rav, a husband can make a chazaka if his wife is not moche. So what is Rav going up against the Mishnah? So biman, and when Rav says that the wife needs to make amacha, needs to be moche, moche to who? Ilema ba'acher, if we're talking about somebody else. So if she has her nichse melog and somebody else comes and starts, taking ownership of them, we're saying that she needs to be. We're saying that right, ish tzricha limchos, she would need to be moche. But v'amar Rav ein machzikim b'nichse eshes ish. But Rav says that we cannot make a chazaka. A third party can't make a chazaka in the property of an eshes ish, in the nichse melog, because if he's going to come and say she sold it to me and I was there for 3 years. So then we say, okay, why were you mocha? Because she thought her husband was going to be mocha. She didn't think that she had to be mocha. So therefore, a third party cannot make a chazaka on nichse melog. Okay, so rather, it must be talking about that she would have to be mocha against her husband. If her husband is on the field for 3 years. So it must be that Rav is saying that the wife needs to be mocha the husband and that the husband can make a chazaka. So what's pshat? But our Mishnah says the husband cannot make a chazaka. So Rava la'olam bebal. So Rava says, look, Rav really is talking about the husband, that she would have to be moche. The thing is, he was doing sort of irregular things. He wasn't just eating the fruits, right? Okay, in the event that a husband is eating the peiros nichse melog, okay, that would not be a chazaka. He can't make a chazaka that way. But if meaning the fruits of the melog field. But if he starts digging ditches and doing all sorts of things, and she doesn't say anything, well, in that case, the husband would be able to make a chazaka because she should have said hey, what are you doing to my field? So in that case, Rav would say that the husband can make a chazaka. V'amar Rav Nachman, Rav bar Avua, ein chazaka l'nizakin. But didn't Rav Nachman say that in Rav bar Avua that you can't make a chazaka when it comes to nizakin? So if he's there ruining the field by digging pits, ditches, and vaults, so then how could that be a chazaka? I thought Rav Nachman says in Rav bar Avua, ein chazaka l'nizakin, that you can't make a chazaka by damaging. So ema ein din chazaka l'nizakin. I'll say that the regular halachis of chazaka don't apply to nizakin. Meaning, in general, the halacha, the chazaka that we've been talking about up until now, sort of the 3 years in lieu of a document, so that does not apply to nizakin. Rather, for example, in this case, where the husband is ruining his wife's field by digging pits, ditches, and vaults, well, then the normal halachas of chazaka, which take 3 years, at least according to the Chachamim, don't apply, and she should be mocha immediately. Immediately she should say, hey, what the heck are you doing here? You're ruining my field. She won't let that, right? Any person, any field owner who sees that somebody's ruining their field, they're not going to wait 3 years before they say anything. They're going to say something immediately. And if they don't say something immediately when they see that this is going on, it's because they're not the owners of the field. And therefore the chazaka can be made immediately. So that's what it's saying. So therefore, when Rav says that a husband can make a chazaka in his wife's field, it's by digging pits, ditches, and vaults. And if she doesn't say anything, then it belongs to him. Alternatively, Lavit Marala, Rav Mari Omar Bekutra Zvid Omar Bebeis Hakise. Alternatively, Rav Nachman and Rav bar Avua is talking about something else. It's talking about something else entirely. Chevra, I could think of 3 different types of chazakas. Meaning, this is talking about an entirely different kind of chazaka. It's not talking about the chazaka in lieu of a document. I can think of 3 different chazakas that come to mind. There is the chazaka that we've been talking about so far in Perek Chezkas Sabatim, which is be'etzem a chazaka in lieu of a document, right? If a person bought a field from somebody else, and after that, they've been working for the field for 3 years, nobody said anything, and then all of a sudden, 3 years later, the original owner says, what are you doing on my field? And he says, well, I bought it from you, and here's the document. Oh, I can't find the document. So in that case, we could lie on a chazaka in lieu of a document. Another kind of chazaka, which we're going to start getting into, I think not tomorrow, but the day after that maybe. Anyways, the other kind of chazaka is like we learned in Masechta Kiddushin, that karka is nicknamed b'kesev v'shtar b'chazaka. It's a type of kinyan. So it's not a proof of a kinyan, but it's a type of kinyan that you can acquire a field by putting up a fence or making an entranceway or something. So there's a chazaka as a type of kinyan, and there's another type of chazaka. That's the chazaka that I feel like is most often we think about. Like, oh wow, you do something 3 times, you have a chazaka. It's Machlokas Rebbe and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel about is it 2 times or 3 times? Usually we assume it's 3 times, I think. That if you do something 3 times, it's a chazaka. That is the kind of chazaka that Rav Nachman and Rav bar Avua is talking about. So therefore, our Mishnah says that a husband cannot make a chazaka in his wife's nichse melok. Now we okay, fine. So that's of course a chazaka, sort of in lieu of a document. Now, Rav had said, but if we're talking about what he did on the field was that he dug ditches, pits, and vaults, so then he can make a chazaka. Again, it's that in lieu of a document, right? If she says, what are you doing here? He says, well, I bought it from you, and I've been here making these ditches and stuff, and you never said anything. So again, it's in lieu of a document. What about the fact that he's causing damage to the field, and Rav Nachman and Rav bar Avua, that there's no chazaka when it comes to damages? That's not talking about this kind of chazaka in lieu of a document. That's talking about the kind of a chazaka that if you've done something several times, that you have a chazaka about that thing. So, and therefore, we said that, Rav Mari says, Bekutra, Rav Zidom Bebeis Hakise. Rav Mari says, for example, with smoke, right? It's talking about, if a neighbor decides that he's gonna open up a meat smoking geschäft, and he's gonna fill up his backyard with meat smokers, and he's got these smokers going all day, all night, all the time, and the neighbors are like, after a while, they're like, all right, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. And he comes and he says, look, you have to move this operation somewhere else. We're not dealing with this. He can't say, well, I've been doing it for 3 days already. I already have a chazakah. No, there's no chazakah when it comes to smoke. Or, for example, if they start using an area as a bathroom, right? Back then they would go to the bathroom, they didn't have plumbing like we have. They would find a place and they would make it into a bathroom. Well, you can't just say, well, we've made this place into a bathroom. No. If the owner of the property comes and says, no, there's not any my property is not being turned into a bathroom. There's no, well, we've already been doing it, there's no chazakah. So therefore, if we're going to say that, well, how could he make a chazakah on his wife's nichsei malog by digging pits, ditches, and vaults? Isn't that causing damage? And Rav Nachman Rav Bar says there's no chazakah via damages. No, it's not that there's no chazakah via damages. The kind of chazakah that like, well, I've already been doing this for a certain amount of time, therefore I can continue to do it. That doesn't apply when we're talking about things, right? Damaging things like creating lots of smoke or using something as a bathroom. You can't, so those you can't kind of like claim that, well, we've already been doing it for 3 times, so therefore we have a chazakah. That wouldn't apply. Rav Mari Amar Bekutra, that's talking about specifically like smoke. Rav Zvid Amar Bebeis Akise. Rav Zvid says talking about requisitioning, maybe something as a bathroom. That won't work. Rav Yosef Amar LaOlam Ba'acher. So if Yosef says that actually, when Rav says that Eishes Ish Tzricha Limchos, she needs to be moche, and otherwise, she would be subject to chazakah. So that is actually talking about somebody else, a third party. But I thought that Rav says Ein machzikim b'nichsei eishes ish. Well, okay, listen to what this is talking about. Rav Yosef Amar LaOlam Ba'acher, it's talking about a third party. Chagon she'achlo miktzas chazakah b'chay abal v'shalosh lachar misas abal migo di'iboy Amar ona zabinto minoch ki Amar lo nami ad zabinto lei. This is talking about a scenario where the husband sold this to this third party his rights to the peiros of the nichsei malug, and then he dies. And then, after the husband is dead, the third party continues eating from the field, from the nichsei malug, for 3 years, and she never said anything. Now, the initial reason why, if a third party cannot make a chazakah in nichsei malug is because she would say, I was assuming that my husband was going to be mocha, but that's obviously not the case anymore because he's dead. And now, the husband had sold the peiros nichsei malug to this third party. Now, the third party knows, and of course the whole neighborhood knows, everybody knows that this property is hers, and that he only, the maximum, the husband, what he could sell to a third party is the fruits. So he knows that the husband's dead. He no longer has any rights to the field. And therefore, why is he continuing to eat from the field? He knows he doesn't have a right to the field anymore. Well, he could at that point make the argument, if 3 years later she says, what are you doing here? He could say, well, when your husband died, I obviously knew that I didn't have any rights anymore, so I bought it from you at that point, and I've been here for 3 years. That would be valid, right? If he then says, look, I bought it from you, right? Zabanta nialoch, v'chatishne chazak, and I've been here for 3 years already. So that would be a valid claim. So in that case, she would have to be moche to counter that claim. So again, if Yosef Amar says, if Yosef LaOlam Ba'acher, it is talking about a third party. For example, if the husband sold the peiros to this third party when he was still alive, but then he died and he's no longer around. And then he continues eating from the nichsei malog and treating it as if it's his for 3 years. Since he can make the claim that I bought it from you and I've been here for 3 years, he can also say, and he can also say that, well, you sold it to your husband, and your husband sold it to me, and I've been here for 3 years, and that would also be valid. Okay, fine. Gufa Amar Rav, earlier Rav said, that you cannot make a chazakah by the property of an Eishes Ish. Alright, Nichse Melog. V'dayone Gola, Amru, the Dayone Gola, Rashbam points out, Shmuel V'karna, we're going to see this Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Yud Zayin. Machzikin, that you can make a chazaka in the property of, in the Nichse Melog. Amar Rav, Alacha K'dayone Gola, and Rav says that the Alacha is like Dayone Gola. Amru Le Rav Kahana Rav Asi Le Rav, Hadu Mar Mishmaite, Hadu Mar Mishmaite. So, Rav Kahana and Rav Asi say to Rav, wait, aren't you the one who says that Ein Machzikin B'Nichse Eshetish? Why would you say that the Alacha is like Dayone Gola, who say that Machzikin B'Nichse Eshetish? So Amar Lu, he says to them, Mistaver Amri K'd Rav Yosef. Mistama, I'm saying like Rav Yosef. Now, as the Rashbam points out, obviously Rav would not be saying like Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was several generations later, right? Rav Yehuda was a student of Rav. Rav Yosef was a student of Rav Yehuda. So he was 2 generations later. Obviously, Rav wasn't quoting Rav Yosef. What he's saying is Mistama. What I'm saying is that the halacha is like Dayanai Gola, that you can make a chazaka b'nichse eshes ish. For example, in the scenario of Rav Yosef, that the husband dies, and then but he had sold the payers to a third party. Now the third party has been using the field for 3 years, and he claims that he, that either he bought it from her, or that she had sold it to the husband had sold it from him. In that case, there would be the chazak would be relevant once the husband is no longer alive. Okay, Chavir, that was officially Daf Nun of Masechta BavaBasra. But it was really, Daf Mem Tes and Nun for the most part. But anyways, we talked about this sugya, a lot of interesting stuff in today's daf. We talked about the sugya of the husband being unable to make a chazaka in his wife's property. We talked about what was the snenario, and we said it's talking about nichse malug, where he cancels it essentially in advance. We talked about this concept of nachas ruach, asisi lebaili. In what cases, when a wife sells property or agrees to sell property, or at least not to collect from the lekuchos, to be torah for the lekuchos, in what places would it apply? In what places would it not apply would it not work because she could say nachas ruach, asisi lebaili? So some very interesting sugyas over there. We referenced, of course, Takanas Usha that we've seen a few times. We discussed the halachos of Yom o Yomayim, and we discussed different types of chazakos with Rav Nachman and Rav Baravua, who says ein chazaka l'nezakin, that is talking about chazaka in terms of like establishing a claim. And peace out.